The federal trial of Sean Diddy Combs has become one of the most scrutinized legal battles of recent years, drawing massive media attention and public interest due to the serious nature of the charges and the celebrity at its center. Combs faces multiple allegations, including sex trafficking, racketeering, obstruction of justice, and witness intimidation. The prosecution's case paints a disturbing picture of systematic abuse, manipulation, and exploitation of women over a prolonged period, with Combs accused of using his immense influence and financial power to orchestrate a criminal enterprise that preyed on vulnerable individuals. Central to the prosecution's argument is the testimony of several women who have come forward describing coercive and abusive relationships with Combs. One witness, known as Jane, recounted the early stages of what appeared to be a consensual relationship, which soon devolved into one marked by intense pressure to participate in freak-off events, large, drug-fueled gatherings involving multiple partners where women were allegedly forced or coerced into sexual acts. Jane's testimony detailed the psychological toll these events took on her, describing feelings of helplessness, exhaustion, and fear of retaliation if she disobeyed Combs's demands. She also spoke about the control exerted over her finances and housing, highlighting a dynamic where withdrawal of support served as a method of manipulation. Another key figure in the trial is Cassie Ventura, a singer and actress who had a long-term relationship with Combs. Ventura's testimony brought to light the physical violence she endured, notably citing a violent hotel hallway assault captured on surveillance footage dated May 2024. The footage showed Combs striking Ventura multiple times, an incident that Ventura testified left her shaken both physically and emotionally. Beyond this event, she detailed ongoing emotional and psychological abuse, describing how Combs would isolate her, control her social interactions, and coerce her into participating in sexual activities that she was uncomfortable with. Ventura's testimony was poignant and powerful, giving the courtroom a raw insight into the darker realities behind the glamorous facade. The prosecution further called Brianna Banabongolan, a close friend of Ventura, whose testimony centered on an incident in 2016 where Combs allegedly threatened her life by dangling her over a balcony during a dispute. Bongolan described a climate of fear and intimidation that Combs cultivated among those close to him, asserting that his control extended beyond romantic partners to friends and associates. She testified about the lasting trauma this incident caused and the fear that prevented many others from coming forward sooner. Bongolan's account was chilling, reinforcing the prosecution's portrayal of Combs as a man who maintained his empire through intimidation and violence. Adding to the prosecution's case, Mia, a former assistant in Combs' organization, testified about enduring sexual harassment and physical abuse while working closely with him. Mia's testimony went beyond personal abuse to describe a culture of systemic intimidation within the organization. She recounted being pressured to lie to investigators and conceal evidence, implicating Combs in obstruction of justice and witness tampering. Her experiences provided a glimpse into how deeply entrenched the alleged criminal enterprise was, highlighting a network designed to protect Combs and silence dissenters. Further evidence was introduced through the testimony of Eddie Garcia, a former hotel security guard who alleged that Combs paid him $100,000 to suppress video footage of the assault on Ventura. This testimony underscored a broader pattern of efforts to hide damaging evidence and manipulate the narrative. Prosecutors also presented financial records showing large, unexplained transfers of money to individuals connected to the alleged scheme, suggesting attempts to bribe or buy silence. The combination of witness accounts, video evidence, and financial documents created a multi-layered case portraying a long-term, organized operation. The prosecution meticulously presented communications, including text messages and emails, that showed coordination in planning the freak-off events and efforts to cover up drug use and abuse. These messages depicted a calculated approach to maintaining control, with explicit instructions for witnesses and victims to remain silent and comply. The government framed these communications as evidence of a criminal enterprise under federal racketeering laws, emphasizing that the case was not about isolated incidents, but a deliberate, sustained pattern of exploitation. The defense, on the other hand, contested the prosecution's version of events, asserting that the relationships were consensual and that the witnesses had motivations tied to money, resentment, or personal vendettas. Combs's attorneys worked to highlight inconsistencies in witness testimonies and suggested that some allegations were exaggerated or fabricated. The defense also brought up Combs' history of philanthropy and positive public contributions, attempting to counterbalance the narrative and cast doubt on the prosecution's portrayal of him as a predatory figure. Judge Arun Subramanian has maintained tight control over the courtroom, ensuring decorum and fairness amid the emotionally charged proceedings. He notably reprimanded Combs during the trial for attempting to communicate with the jury through facial expressions and gestures, emphasizing the seriousness of the trial atmosphere. This moment underscored the tension and high stakes as the case continued to unfold under intense public and media scrutiny. Legal analysts following the trial have pointed out that the prosecution's strategy to frame the case as a racketeering enterprise could have wide-ranging implications if successful. The use of federal racketeering statutes in cases involving sexual exploitation is relatively rare and represents an aggressive approach to tackling systemic abuse by powerful individuals. If the government secures a conviction on these charges, it could pave the way for similar cases to be pursued under organized crime laws. The defense's focus on undermining witness credibility and framing the relationships as consensual is a common tactic in high-profile sex abuse cases. They are expected to call character witnesses and experts to discuss the psychological aspects of memory and coercion, aiming to raise reasonable doubt. Additionally, challenges to the admissibility of certain evidence, including video footage and financial documents, are anticipated as the trial proceeds. Outside the courtroom, the trial has sparked a broader conversation about power, dynamics, and abuse within the entertainment industry. Activists and advocacy groups have used the trial to highlight systemic issues, including the difficulty victims face when accusing powerful celebrities and the mechanisms that enable abuse to go unchecked. Social media platforms have become arenas for passionate debates, with supporters of the accusers calling for justice and others questioning the validity of the claims. This case also highlights the risks faced by those within the inner circles of influential figures, where fear and intimidation can silence victims and witnesses. The testimonies reveal a culture where loyalty is enforced through threats and violence, complicating efforts to expose wrongdoing. Several former associates of Combs have come forward to describe the pressures of working in such environments, shedding light on the hidden costs of fame and fortune. As the trial continues, further testimonies and evidence are expected to be presented, keeping public attention sharply focused on the courtroom drama. The outcome of this trial has the potential to influence not only Combs' future, but also set a precedent for how similar cases are prosecuted in the future. The legal community is watching closely, aware that the verdict could signal a shift in how the justice system handles cases involving celebrities and allegations of systemic abuse. The unfolding trial has also led to a surge in media productions covering the case, including documentaries and investigative reports. These works explore the intersection of celebrity culture, power, and justice, contributing to an ongoing public dialogue about accountability. The trial's impact reaches far beyond the immediate legal consequences, affecting cultural perceptions and raising awareness about the realities many victims face. In the weeks ahead, the courtroom will likely see heightened legal battles over evidence and witness credibility. Expert testimony on trauma, memory, and coercion is expected to play a significant role as both sides seek to sway the jury. The prosecution's ability to maintain a cohesive narrative and the defense's efforts to dismantle it will be pivotal in determining the case's outcome. Throughout the trial, Combs's legal team has reiterated his innocence, emphasizing the presumption of innocence and criticizing what they describe as a media circus. Victims' rights organizations continue to advocate for justice and systemic reforms, highlighting the importance of this case in the broader fight against sexual exploitation. The trial has galvanized conversations around consent, power, and the legal protections available to vulnerable populations. Ultimately, the Sean Diddy Combs trial is a watershed moment in the intersection of law, celebrity, and social justice. It confronts the complex realities of abuse in the context of fame and power, and the challenges victims face in coming forward. As the case moves toward its conclusion, the nation watches closely, aware that the verdict will reverberate across legal, cultural, and societal landscapes. Beyond the immediate courtroom proceedings, the trial has sparked a nationwide conversation on the power dynamics inherent in the entertainment industry. Experts have noted that cases like this expose how celebrity status can create environments where abuse goes unchecked for years. The intertwining of fame, money, and influence creates barriers to justice for victims who often face intimidation and disbelief. This trial is emblematic of a broader reckoning occurring across industries worldwide, where the voices of survivors are demanding to be heard and accountability is sought at all levels. In addition to witness testimonies, the trial has brought forward forensic evidence that provides chilling corroboration of the prosecution's claims. Toxicology reports and medical examinations from several witnesses indicate frequent use of drugs such as ketamine and ecstasy during the alleged freak-off events. These substances, known for their dissociative and euphoric effects, were allegedly administered to incapacitate victims and reduce resistance. The prosecution argues that this demonstrates a calculated method of control designed to exploit vulnerable women systematically. The defense has countered these claims by questioning the chain of custody and authenticity of the forensic evidence. They argue that inconsistencies and procedural errors undermine the reliability of the reports. Furthermore, defense attorneys have suggested that drug use was consensual and part of a shared lifestyle rather than evidence of coercion. This clash over the scientific evidence is expected to be a critical battleground as the trial progresses, with expert witnesses from both sides poised to challenge each other's conclusions. Another significant element of the prosecution's case is the detailed financial trail uncovered during the investigation. Records show large transfers of money to shell companies and individuals closely associated with Combs, which prosecutors assert were payments to maintain silence or facilitate the illegal activities. These transactions, some occurring around the times of alleged assaults, suggest attempts to obstruct justice through bribery and intimidation. The defense disputes these claims, contending that the payments were legitimate business expenses unrelated to the charges. The trial has also shown a spotlight on the role of enablers and accomplices within Combs' organization. Prosecutors have named several individuals allegedly involved in recruiting victims, arranging the freak-off events, and managing the logistics of the enterprise. These accomplices are under separate investigations, and some have already entered plea deals in exchange for testimony. Their cooperation provides a behind-the-scenes look at how the operation functioned and offers crucial insight into the hierarchical structure of the alleged criminal network. Public reaction to the trial has been mixed and deeply polarized. Social media platforms have seen heated debates, with hashtags supporting both Combs and the accusers trending at various times. Some fans express unwavering loyalty to Combs, arguing that he is being unfairly targeted by a justice system eager to condemn a high-profile figure. Others view the trial as a long overdue moment of reckoning, praising the courage of the women who have stepped forward. This division reflects broader societal tensions around issues of celebrity, justice, and the treatment of survivors. Media coverage has been relentless, with 24-hour news cycles dedicated to updates and analysis. The trial's high profile has attracted commentators from legal, entertainment, and social advocacy backgrounds, each offering different perspectives on the implications. Documentaries and investigative podcasts have already begun to surface, dissecting the trial's nuances and exploring the cultural significance of the allegations. This saturation of information has heightened public awareness, but also contributed to misinformation and sensationalism, complicating efforts to maintain a fair judicial process. Legal scholars have noted that this trial could influence future legislation and enforcement practices related to sex trafficking and organized abuse. The use of racketeering statutes in this context is innovative and could become a model for prosecuting other cases where traditional charges might fall short. This approach recognizes the systemic nature of abuse and the need for legal tools that address the organizational aspect of exploitation. Should Combs be convicted on these charges, it may encourage prosecutors to pursue similar cases with renewed vigor. The defense has signaled plans to introduce psychological experts who will testify about the complexity of consensual relationships and the challenges of interpreting trauma-related memories. These experts aim to provide context for inconsistencies in witness statements and highlight the difficulties in distinguishing between consent and coercion in high-pressure environments. The defense hopes to sow reasonable doubt and emphasize the need for a cautious approach to allegations that involve intimate relationships. The judge has remained vigilant in maintaining the trial's integrity, carefully weighing motions related to evidence admissibility and witness testimony. Several contentious hearings have addressed whether certain graphic videos and private communications should be presented to the jury, with both sides lobbying aggressively for their inclusion or exclusion. The court's decisions on these matters have significant implications for the narrative the jury will ultimately consider. Outside the courtroom, advocacy groups continue to push for reforms aimed at protecting victims and preventing exploitation. They highlight gaps in current laws and call for better resources to support survivors of sex trafficking and abuse. The trial has amplified these calls, prompting lawmakers to consider new measures to address systemic issues in vulnerable communities, including those tied to the entertainment industry. Meanwhile, Combs's public relations team has worked to manage his image amid the crisis. They have released statements reaffirming his commitment to innocence and respect for the judicial process, while also highlighting his philanthropic efforts and contributions to music and culture. Despite the allegations, Combs retains a loyal fan base, and his team is actively working to preserve his reputation in the eyes of the public and potential jurors. The complexity of the case is further heightened by the intersection of legal, cultural, and psychological factors. The jury must navigate not only the facts, but also societal attitudes about fame, gender, power, and victimhood. This places enormous pressure on the judicial system to deliver a verdict that balances the need for justice with fairness and due process. As the trial moves forward, new developments are anticipated, including additional witness testimonies and potentially explosive revelations from plea bargain agreements. The prosecution's case will likely continue to focus on the pattern of abuse and the orchestration of the criminal enterprise, while the defense will press to dismantle the credibility of witnesses and contest the interpretation of evidence. The outcome of this trial is widely expected to have lasting repercussions, both legally and culturally. It will likely influence public perceptions of accountability among powerful figures and shape the discourse on sexual abuse and exploitation. The case underscores the importance of vigilance and reform in industries where vulnerabilities are exploited and victims often struggle to be heard. In summary, the Sean Diddy Combs trial encapsulates the challenges of prosecuting alleged abuse in the modern age, especially when intertwined with celebrity culture. It highlights the persistent struggle victims face in seeking justice and the evolving legal frameworks designed to address complex patterns of exploitation. As the courtroom drama continues to unfold, the nation watches closely, understanding that the verdict will resonate far beyond the individuals involved, impacting societal attitudes and legal precedents for years to come. A critical aspect of the trial that has garnered significant attention is the role of digital evidence in uncovering the alleged criminal activities. Prosecutors have introduced hundreds of pages of text messages, emails, and social media communications that paint a detailed picture of coordination and concealment. These messages include explicit instructions to manage the freak-off events, directives for witnesses to remain silent, and exchanges about financial transactions linked to the case. Digital forensics experts have testified about recovering deleted messages and encrypted chats, underscoring the lengths to which the accused and their associates allegedly went to hide evidence. One such communication between Combs and a close associate referenced plans to keep things under control before a major public event, which prosecutors interpret as efforts to prevent disclosures of illicit activities. The defense challenges the interpretation of these messages, arguing that they are taken out of context and do not prove criminal intent. This clash over digital evidence highlights the complexities of interpreting communication in the digital age and its impact on legal proceedings. The trial has also focused heavily on the psychological impact on the alleged victims. Several witnesses underwent extensive psychological evaluations, with reports indicating symptoms consistent with trauma and abuse. Expert witnesses specializing in trauma psychology have explained to the jury how victims of prolonged abuse can experience memory lapses, denial, and complex emotional responses that may affect their testimony. These insights aim to help jurors understand apparent inconsistencies and provide context for the witness's behavior. In addition to individual trauma, experts have discussed the concept of trauma bonding, a psychological phenomenon where victims develop strong emotional attachments to their abusers, complicating the dynamics of consent and resistance. This phenomenon is particularly relevant in cases involving powerful figures who wield significant influence over victims' lives, as prosecutors argue is the case here. The defense counters by emphasizing personal agency and consent, suggesting that the relationships were consensual and voluntary. The jury has been presented with detailed timelines and chronologies of events, mapping out the alleged operation over several years. This timeline includes the recruitment of victims, organization of the events, and alleged cover up efforts. Visual aids and charts have been used to help jurors follow the complex sequence of occurrences, which span multiple states and involve numerous individuals. This comprehensive approach aims to demonstrate the systematic and organized nature of the alleged crimes. Throughout the trial, courtroom tensions have occasionally flared, with emotional testimonies leading to visible reactions from the accused and the public gallery. The emotional weight of the testimonies has underscored the human cost of the alleged crimes, providing a stark contrast to the legal and financial machinations discussed. These moments have also raised questions about jury impartiality and the challenge of balancing empathy with objectivity. The defense has sought to humanize Combs, presenting character witnesses including longtime friends, colleagues, and family members who speak to his generosity, mentorship, and positive contributions. These testimonies aim to create reasonable doubt by contrasting the prosecution's allegations with a different narrative of Combs' character. The defense also plans to introduce evidence of inconsistent statements from key witnesses to further challenge the prosecution's case. Legal observers have noted that the trial's duration and complexity are unusual, reflecting the seriousness of the charges and the volume of evidence. The extended timeline also reflects strategic decisions by both sides, including careful preparation and multiple legal motions. This protracted process can test the stamina and focus of all participants, including jurors who must weigh extensive evidence over weeks. Another layer of complexity arises from the involvement of multiple jurisdictions and agencies. While the federal trial covers racketeering and trafficking charges, state-level investigations are ongoing, and separate civil lawsuits have been filed by some accusers. This multifaceted legal landscape underscores the far-reaching implications of the case and the various avenues through which justice and accountability are being pursued. Media coverage has brought attention to the broader societal issues illuminated by the trial, including the exploitation of women, the abuse of power, and the challenges of prosecuting high-profile individuals. Commentators have debated the responsibilities of the entertainment industry in preventing such abuses and the role of fans and consumers in holding public figures accountable. The trial has also sparked discussions on how the legal system can better support victims and navigate the complexities of consent and coercion. As the trial nears its final phases, speculation about the potential verdict and sentencing dominates headlines. Legal experts suggest that if Combs is convicted on the racketeering and trafficking charges, he could face significant prison time, including decades behind bars. However, the defense's efforts to dismantle the prosecution's case leave open the possibility of acquittal or lesser charges. The trial also raises questions about the impact on Combs' career and legacy. While some sponsors and collaborators have distanced themselves, others remain supportive or neutral, reflecting the uncertain outcome. The entertainment industry faces difficult choices about how to respond to allegations of this magnitude, balancing due process with public relations considerations. In the final days of the trial, attention turns to closing arguments, where both sides will summarize their cases and seek to persuade the jury. The prosecution will likely emphasize the pattern of abuse, the corroborative evidence, and the credibility of witnesses. The defense will reiterate doubts about motives, inconsistencies in testimony, and the absence of direct evidence proving non-consensual conduct. Regardless of the outcome, the trial marks a significant moment in the ongoing fight against sexual exploitation and trafficking. It highlights the need for vigilance, legal innovation, and societal change to address the vulnerabilities exploited by those in power. The case serves as a reminder of the human stories behind headlines and the complexities involved in seeking justice. The nation awaits the jury's decision with bated breath, understanding that the verdict will resonate far beyond the courtroom. It will influence public discourse, legal precedents, and the lives of all involved for years to come. As closing arguments draw near, both the prosecution and defense prepare to make their final appeals to the jury, a moment that could determine the fate of Sean Diddy Combs. The prosecution is expected to highlight the overwhelming evidence of a coordinated criminal enterprise, emphasizing the courage of the survivors and the devastating impact of the alleged abuses. They will argue that the evidence clearly demonstrates Combs's central role in orchestrating a pattern of exploitation that cannot be ignored or excused by celebrity status. Conversely, the defense is set to focus on dismantling the prosecution's narrative, pointing to inconsistencies, alleged motives of revenge by accusers, and the lack of direct evidence proving non-consent. They will seek to humanize Combs and remind jurors of the presumption of innocence, urging them to carefully consider whether the prosecution has met its burden beyond a reasonable doubt. Throughout the trial, the role of the media has been both a boon and a challenge. While extensive coverage has helped shine a light on systemic issues of abuse and exploitation, it has also raised concerns about pretrial publicity influencing potential jurors and public opinion. Judges have taken steps to mitigate this through jury instructions and sequestration in certain phases, but the influence of social media and viral commentary remains a factor. The trial has also inspired conversations about the responsibility of streaming platforms, record labels, and event organizers in addressing allegations of misconduct by high-profile artists. Industry insiders suggest that the trial may prompt a reevaluation of policies and safeguards designed to protect artists, staff, and fans alike. Some have called for independent oversight bodies and improved reporting mechanisms to prevent similar abuses in the future. Legal experts anticipate that the verdict, whatever it may be, will likely lead to appeals and extended legal battles. Given the high stakes and complexity, the case could wind through the courts for years, continuing to draw public interest and legal scrutiny. It also raises important questions about how justice is served when allegations span decades and involve powerful individuals. Beyond the courtroom, advocacy groups are mobilizing to ensure that the voices of survivors remain central to ongoing discussions. They emphasize the importance of trauma-informed approaches in legal proceedings and the need for systemic reforms that address the root causes of exploitation. The trial has energized movements focused on empowerment, accountability, and healing for survivors worldwide. The impact on Sean Combs personally and professionally is profound. As one of the most influential figures in music and culture, the trial has cast a shadow over his legacy. Supporters argue that his contributions to the industry and philanthropic efforts should not be overlooked, while critics maintain that accountability must come first. The outcome will inevitably shape how history remembers Combs and the broader culture he helped shape. As the jury deliberates, many await a verdict that could serve as a precedent-setting moment in the fight against sexual exploitation and trafficking. It underscores the challenges of prosecuting complex cases involving power, consent, and celebrity. Regardless of the final decision, the trial has already left an indelible mark on public consciousness and legal discourse. The case also highlights the evolving nature of justice in the digital age, where social media, forensic technology, and public opinion intersect in unprecedented ways. It calls attention to the delicate balance between protecting the rights of the accused and empowering survivors to seek redress. The lessons learned here will likely influence how future cases are handled and how society responds to allegations of this magnitude. In conclusion, the Sean Diddy Combs trial is a landmark moment that transcends its immediate facts. It challenges institutions, cultural norms, and legal frameworks to confront uncomfortable truths and demand accountability. As the nation watches, the hope remains that justice in its fullest sense will be served, not just for those in the courtroom, but for all who have suffered in silence.